show you. You might see something coming your way towards you, so just a heads up. This is cold salt water in the habitat. If you have expensive cameras, cell phones, or expensive children, sometimes that cold salt water may not mix too well with them. But welcome to the aquarium. Welcome to our beluga show. How many of you are excited to be here? First time today. That's a good number of hands. Oh, that's exciting. I have to say I'm not surprised I'm seeing as many hands as that because typically belugas do not live in very populated areas, but we're so lucky here at the aquarium to get to work very closely with 3 female beluga whales, and our trainers who are joining us here beside the habitat have that incredible job. The trainer closest to me is Julie. In the middle we have Anna, and beside her we have Phil. And they get to work with our incredible belugas who are closest to me working with Julie. This is Aurora. She's actually in her 20s, gorgeous whale, but she's the mother of the whale to her left. That is Keela in the middle there. Keela is actually 16 going on 17. First beluga to be born and conceived at a Canadian aquarium. And last but not least, working with Phil, that is Kavna. Showing you her mouth. Kavna is actually in her 40s and she's believed to be the oldest beluga in a facility in the world. So I think our trainers and whales deserve a round of applause, don't you? And despite the fact that we may not find belugas in our backyards, the lives of people and belugas are intimately connected. Even to those cute little faces, we might have an impact on that melon. There it is. But belugas like this, we know you're not going to find them in the Strait of Georgia off the coast of Vancouver. So who can tell me, where do we find most belugas? Who wants to yell it out?
Canada.
Loud and proud, out in the Arctic, absolutely, you are right. It's where most often you will find beluga whales. And belugas are not the only animals living in the Arctic. They are joined by creatures like polar bears, puffins, walruses, and they are. And in fact, people live up there as well. Now, in fact, people and belugas live in this very cold place, the Arctic. Some of the words that might come to mind of a place like that, what do you think? Words that come to mind when you think of the Arctic. Yell them out. Cold, icy, right? So these are all words that belugas have to deal with, things that they have to deal with in the Arctic. So they have to have adaptations to help them survive in that cold place. And one of the adaptations is, in fact, echolocation. Now, belugas living in this cold place, they need to find a lot of food to fill their bellies. And you may have noticed on their foreheads they have a large melon that they can move. If you have a look at our whales, they're very good at moving that forehead because it's a mass of waxy fat, and they can control the shape of it. Now, echolocation is the ability for belugas to send those sounds out into the water, listen for the echoes, and form an underwater image of their surrounding world. There's some sounds right there. Now, why would they have such good echolocation? Well, in the Arctic, in fact, sometimes you have 24 hours of darkness, so you need a way to find your way around as well as finding your food. And belugas are believed to have the best echolocation, even better than that of bottlenose dolphins. So very incredible animals, incredible adaptation, lots of melon wiggling that these animals can do, so very cool adaptation. But belugas living in the Arctic, we said they're not the only things living there. In fact, there are people there as well. And specifically, let's talk about Inuit, who have survived and thrived in the Arctic for well over 5,000 years. Now, they've done a very good job of this because they've learned how to live off of the land, specifically in how they get their vitamins and minerals. Now, in our case, we go to grocery stores on a daily basis sometimes to get our fruits and veggies to make sure that we have a well-rounded diet. In the Arctic, you might only see a fresh shipment once or twice a year, but you might be surrounded by beluga whales who have a very thick layer of blubber surrounding their body. That's what Aurora's demonstrating for you there. In fact, those of you in underwater belugas having a chance to see Kavna and Aurora's blubber up close. By consuming the blubber of a beluga, Inuit have learned they can get the same number of vitamins and minerals that we get from our fruits and veggies. You're seeing a bit of a barrel roll from Keela here at the side. More blubber. In fact, every part of the animal is used, including even the skin, which can be used for things like shoelaces. There's another barrel roll at the front. But in fact, in the Arctic has its challenges because both people and belugas are facing a serious challenge that's actually kind of caused by us here in Vancouver. And it may not seem like it, but we are connected to the Arctic. As I look for the audience, I see lots of cameras and cell phones. I use those things too. I love using them. The more we use those items, however, we are using electricity, which does produce carbon dioxide. And what happens is it builds a blanket around our atmosphere. That CO2 builds up and it actually holds heat into the planet. Now, just like for ourselves, if you're cold, you put a blanket on your body, you get... Oh my goodness. You get... Warm! Warmer, absolutely. And we're seeing the same thing happen on our planet. And where you're seeing it the most is in the Arctic, where animals like this live. But what exactly does it mean for a beluga? Open mouths. They're reminding me it has everything to do with the food chain. In fact, in the Arctic, you have a layer of sea ice that's hopefully pretty thick. And underneath of it, you have a layer of sea ice algae. Now, that algae is consumed by creatures like invertebrates. You have shrimps and crabs that hopefully eat a lot of algae. We have fish eating those, and belugas eating pretty much all of those animals. And what you're seeing demonstrated here is a spitting behavior. Because the food is hiding in the sand, the belugas can spit water at that food to expose it. You're seeing how much of a powerful jet aurora there can jet out. And also in the center there, you're seeing Cam to show off how big a body she has.
Kaya pala may Steve.
They don't just go after you, they go after our fresh fish as well. Well, those belugas and sex, very incredible animals. Like Kavna, incredible animals living in a place where they are seeing impacts by people. And in fact, let's move somewhere a little bit warmer. How many of you are from Eastern Canada? Show of hands. My favorite is when the kids put their hands up and the parents are like, no, you're not. How many of you have family from Eastern Canada? Maybe this accounts for the kids. Alright, well maybe if you know someone in Eastern Canada, there's actually a population of belugas in the St. Lawrence River, about 1,000 animals that live there, and in fact people living close to them might have a chance to see them up close. Now most of the time you're not going to be eating them, they're not part of your food system, but you might rely on them for economic value. Now what does that mean? There are whale watching companies in the St. Lawrence River that give you a chance to go out and catch a glimpse of belugas. If you're lucky, you might see one or two. You might see them swimming through the habitat like you're seeing Keela, or if you're really lucky, you might see something like this if you're out on a tour. But a bit more likely from a beluga, what you would see if you are at the St. Lawrence is actually what you saw from Kavna a second ago. You were seeing her back. And if you look to Keela, who's swimming towards us, again, her back is the most obvious part of her as she moves through the environment. What's really incredible about this is while it may not seem exciting to us to just see a whale's back, it's exciting to researchers because they have learned they can identify individual whales by that dorsal ridge. It's as unique to each whale as our fingerprints are to ourselves. So very exciting when it comes to knowing who's living where and how many of these animals are left and surviving in that area. And talking about surviving in the area, in fact, belugas living in the St. Lawrence face some different challenges compared to the belugas in the Arctic. Because living closer to people alone is a challenge in itself. But I'm wondering if you guys can help me out. I forget the names of the two largest cities in Canada. I think one's in Quebec and one's in Ontario. Anyone want to yell them out? Montreal? That's one. Toronto is the other one, absolutely. Well, Toronto, Montreal, two largest cities in Canada, and larger cities tend to produce a lot more chemicals and toxins because they might have more industrial processes, they might have more factories, and those things can end up in the waterways of a beluga's home. Now, not only do they end up in the water, they actually can build up in the animals' bodies. And in fact, what we're seeing is in the case of belugas, they do have that very thick layer of blubber that we mentioned, and what we're seeing is the chemicals building up in the blubber. In fact, sometimes what happens is belugas do wash ashore as dead creatures in the St. Lawrence, and when tests are done, we find that the levels of toxins in that blubber are so high that the animals have to be disposed of as if they're toxic waste. And again, Our Lady's showing you just how much blubber does surround their fantastic bodies. So that's definitely a concern for us, our impact on the environment. But not only do we have a pollution-related impact on their lives, we actually impact their lives by our activities. Now, belugas are really neat animals because they're very good and comfortable at swimming around in very shallow in shallow rivers and estuaries. Now, in these places, belugas will go, they can scratch off extra skin that might be bothering them, and in fact, they can go to give birth to their calves in these places. These areas offer belugas a very good nursery ground, and often what a beluga will do as well is spend some time teaching their young the sounds they need to know in order to communicate with other belugas. Now, what can happen is in these areas, if you look to the back, there we have a beaching beluga. How comfortable they are in this area. But the fact that they're comfortable in these shallow areas, if we are more active, our sounds can really impact the learning of a baby beluga. Now, belugas themselves are noisy creatures. If you listen carefully, you might have a chance to hear some of the sounds our whales can make. Let's give our whales a round of applause. Love Kavana's sounds. This is sampling of some of the noises belugas can make. You might have heard a little bit earlier in this show, but there's a variety of sounds, and these are so important for them to learn at a young age. Just like people, we have to learn our sounds. But you can see they're loud, but those sounds of belugas can easily be overridden by any noise from boats, machines, construction, airplanes, things like that. Our activity in their environment can have an impact on even the learning of a baby beluga. But the sounds you just heard our belugas make are so exciting to us because we have the chance for researchers to come here to the aquarium and work very closely with our whales thanks to the relationship that our trainers build and maintain with them. But to tell you more about what it's like to work with a beluga, we're going to pass it on over to Julie, who's beside me.
Thanks, Lauren, and she's absolutely correct. By building and maintaining a strong bond of trust with our 3 beluga whales, we're able to obtain a variety of different information from them about their species as a whole. Now, the way we're able to work with researchers is by training, and some of the behaviors that we train with our belugas you've seen throughout this session, but some of the more important behaviors are a little bit quieter in nature, in the sense that they're called animal husbandry or healthcare behaviors. Now, these are behaviors that allow us to ensure the health and well-being of the 3 females that you see here in front of you. For example, what Aurora's doing right now is a tail or a fluke present. And in this position, you might have the ability to see some gray lines running down her tail. These are the veins within her body. And what we can do is bring our veterinary technicians out, insert a needle into that vein, and get a voluntary blood sample in the same way that you provide one for your doctor during your yearly physical. Now, all this information is extremely important, particularly when we want to head up to the Arctic or over to the St. Lawrence in hopes of learning more about the species there and also be able to help them in those areas. Back to you, Lauren.
Thanks so much, Julie. And not only do we have a chance to participate in meaningful research like Julie's mentioning, but we have the chance to share these animals with folks like yourselves who maybe have never seen belugas before or may not have a chance to see them in the Arctic or the St. Lawrence. I know for myself every day that I get to watch them, I'm reminded of how intelligent and curious they are, but how quickly their environment is changing. So today we've talked about the impacts that we have on a beluga's environment in those 2 places. And I wanted to chat with you folks about some of the small changes that we can make in our lives to help the lives of these creatures. Things like turning off our lights, washing our clothes in cold water, and even unplugging your cell phone chargers. These are great ways to start. But we do challenge you to think Kavna beluga-sized changes that you can do to help the lives of these stunning creatures. But most importantly, we hope you leave with a better understanding of how the lives of ourselves and whales like Kavna, Aurora, and Keela are intimately connected. Well, on behalf of myself, our trainers, and our whales, we do thank you for joining us here at the aquarium today. Those of you in the splash zone. Thank you so much for joining us.